This video is a quick walkthrough of the PathDesigner financial tool, which is used primarily for building bill of materials. Currently, you're looking at the main form, which it opens to when you open it. There are four environments, four primary environments within PathDesigner. There's the main form, which gives you the results, and it's kind of a master control center. There's a layout environment where you choose how the BOM will be built, what it will look like. There's obviously constraints, but there's a lot of freedom to move things around in the format, and what to add to the BOM, what not to include in the BOM, and so on. There's a whole section in terms of setting up rules for items. So if you are going to apply an item, how many do you require? Under what conditions? Is it per site? Is it per radio? Is it per antenna? Is it only for specific products, specific antenna mounts, for example, or specific radios require this cable? So there's a whole lot of rules. That's actually the most complicated part of the whole tool. There's also another environment, a fourth environment for costs. Every item in the tool has costs, price, markups, and there's an editor for that. So I'm going to show you all of these environments. There's a couple of other smaller ones, but these are the primary ones. So I'm going to walk you through very quickly those environments and show you also the navigation between them. It's quite easy to move between them without having to always go back to the starting point. So in the main form, there's a large chart area, as you can see, which gives a visual results. Currently I have 3 projects loaded. The tool takes system workbooks or access project files that are generated by PathDesigner. These are in a very specific format, so if you want to use the tool to do any bill of materials, you absolutely have to use that format. And of course, the easiest way to generate the format is to work in PathDesigner Engineering. It's a standard output. The 2 file types, either system workbook, which is an Excel format, or an access file. They work equally well. The Excel version is the older version. Access files are more up to date, but they actually contain the same information, can be used interchangeably. Okay, so the list of the 3 that I've loaded are here. These are 3 projects. They're actually, as I say, system workbooks. You can see they're XLSX files. The summary view that you're looking at here with these 3 is giving you the costs or price, whichever, that the tool has calculated. And whenever you select on any one of them, the associated chart below updates, and if you select them all, 2 or 3 of them, you'll get the bars indicating them. If you want to load a new project to the tool, you click on the browse and load. You just click on that and you choose your system workbook, and it gets added to the list. Initially there's no costs calculated, so it just comes up with blank fields. You can delete any individual one. So for example, if I wanted to delete this one, and then I can show you adding it back in. So this is the Cielo hub and spoke version of this data. I'll delete this, and now I can go browse for it, and it's this one here, and it'll get added back into my list. It takes a few seconds because it does some checking, and there it is in my list here, and you can see there's no costs. If I want to calculate without creating a bill of material, to create a bill of material is it takes quite a bit more time than a simple calculation of cost, and I'll give you some numbers in a moment what that means. But first, if I wanted to calculate just the cost of this, just get a number based upon everything that's in the tool. I just select it and I click calculate and chart, and I can do up to 4 at a time, as it says. The reason for the limitation is because of the bar charts only support 4. So I'll just click calculate and chart. It takes about 15 seconds roughly to run for this size network. This is I believe 58, or in the order of 58 paths, 55 sites. And as I say, it takes about 15 seconds, and you'll get a result in terms of numbers, and there we are. So the numbers appear, the chart appears. So this is the quick and dirty how to get a number to work with, a starting point. Now, I'm going to talk about all these other buttons on the right here, which have to do with building the bill of material. But before I go there, and I'm not going to go into detail because we'll be here a very long time, but I'm going to show you the other environments that I mentioned. So the BOM layout, I'll click on the BOM layout. It brings up a form. Now this is um, architected in order to align with the format of the system workbooks, rather, excuse me, of the BOM layout that CIC uses. So I'll show you an example of a BOM layout, and then I'll show you how this links to that. So this is the BOM that was created. You can see we have a header area, sites go across the top, and items go down the left here with the category, item, part number, notes, and so on. And the categories in this case is services, and down below in this peachy pink color there's equipment and materials. So those are the categories, and the subcategories are these smaller groupings here. Now if I go and look at my layout, you'll see, let me just go to the top of the Excel sheet here first. So the BOM layout, here's my site type structure, this header area. This is defined up here in this layout, and I can choose which items go in. There's a list of items that I can choose from, so they'll get added or subtracted. If I don't want them, if I don't want to know anything about what pop something's assigned to, I can just delete it from my layout. And when I create my BOM, my Excel BOM later, that row would not be there. So I have control over the headers. Now the categories are shown in this big window here, subcategories beside them, and the order in which things are set up can be adjusted, and the items within the subcategories can be adjusted. So I'll just show you quickly. If I scan down, at one point it becomes equipment and material. You can see here equipment and material with its subcategories. Now within here, if I wanted, for example, and this just to give you an idea of the editing capability, if I wanted surveys to be at the top, this is the top category in my Excel report, not design and engineering. So I just select the subcategory that I want. I can do it either on the right here, but it's probably easier visually here. I click any of the survey rows, doesn't matter. And here, subcategory edit on the right, I just say move it up, and it pushes it to the top of the BOM. So when I create the Excel report, it's going to come out in this order now. If I decide I want past surveys ahead of survey mobilization within the subcategory, I can move it up or down, doesn't matter. So let's move it up and down. So I'll start here, and this is an item I'm moving. So I go to item edit and I say move up, and it pushes it to the top, and move down brings it back. So you can move things around. You can move entire categories like services and equipment. You can alternate, or if you want to change the order of the full categories, there's many items. If I don't want any services in my BOM, I only want materials, I just go into my my categories, category, and I say delete selected category. And similarly, I can add a category if it's in my list here. And I'll show you how those are edited after, but if I wanted to add something, I would select it and click add category, and then I could start adding subcategories to that category. So I have a lot of flexibility in what goes into the bill of material. The categories, subcategories, and items are all defined in the other editors, but this is where you arrange how they come out. Now, as I said, there's also rules and costs environment, and each of these forms you can navigate between them very easily. So I'll close the Excel to show you multiple forms here at once. So this one in the back left here is the main form. I clicked on layout to come here. If I want to go now say look at costs, I could click on go to item cost, and it'll open up the cost form. From here, if I want to go to rules, I click on item rules, and it takes me to the rules. And if I want to go back to say layout, I can click here and go to layout. So you can navigate between the environments. Now any item that I'm interested in, so if I'm working with, I don't know, preliminary path calculations in my services, and I want to know what does this item cost? I just select the item and I say edit cost, and it will go into the cost form with that item selected, and I can edit it. And I'll explain a little bit more of the functionality in these other forms in a moment. There's color coding here. As the label says at the bottom here, orange text indicates when there's no cost, and red indicates that a rule does not exist. What that means, if there's no rule, the tool won't know how to apply quantities into the bill of material for it. So if I scan down, here's an orange one, which is RFAM site assessment. It has no cost. The red one, environmental, NEPA and SHPO, has no rule, so it doesn't know how to apply that into the bill of material. So this idea of using colored text is common throughout the tool. Okay, so if I wanted, for example, I wanted to apply a cost to, here's one, interference study, which has no cost. I just click on it, go into my cost editor, and you can see that the cost is blank in the cost editor. Okay, so since we're here, I'll talk about the cost editor. The rules editor is much more complicated. In fact, it's really the most difficult part of the whole tool. So I'll start simple here. So if I'm in this cost editor and I want to add a cost, the edit areas are the row right above the listing. These are selectors because you can't create categories, subcategories, and parts and so on here, but you can set prices. So if I wanted to set a price, I could set, I don't know, $500, and I could set a markup if I wanted, I don't know, and a price would be calculated, or I can enter it either way. And after I've gone through this, I just say save changes up here. Now, if I want a filtered view, so instead of editing, I want to just get a filtered view. I want to zoom down and find something. So the upper row here is the filters. So if I say, well, I want to look at materials, equipment and materials. I'm not interested in services, and I'm interested in, say, cable and hardware. So I click that, and if I'm looking for a specific item, in fact, I don't have to go through the preliminary steps. I could just go right to part number and say I'm interested in a particular item. Doesn't look like there's anything. Well, actually, this number is probably there, but it's not under equipment materials. So go back to all, put this subcategory to all, and now it found this part number under services. So you have this filtering capability here, and you can do it by description, and you could even filter by pricing if you want. So that's kind of how this general environment works. Now this idea of having two rows, one for filtering, one for editing, is common throughout the editors in this tool. There's some other items up here to do with creating or importing service and equipment cost Excel sheets. There's a better environment than here, and I can show you that separately. You can also set up prime contractor margins if you want to, and that comes out in the bill of material. Okay, so let me, and of course you can clear all item costs, and you can actually delete items here. So that's that environment. Now if I go to the rules, actually I'll go back to the main form just to show you we can navigate from the main form to the rules. The rules, as it says, are fairly complicated, and you can see it's a very large form here. And I'll just show you an example of one item because there's so many permutations here. Let's go into this one, for example, antenna mounting hardware. So we'll filter on antenna mounting hardware, and I'll just pick one here. So here's a good example. This is a flex twist for 6 gigahertz, and there's, you can see that there's 4 rows with the same text. If I want to see the text better, I can open it up here. It tells me more about it, but it's really the same item repeated 4 times. Each of these is a rule associated with using this. So in this example, in the display, I can see that I want a quantity of 1 applied into the bill of material. The conditions when I apply it are what's given in the subsequent columns here. So column 1 says I want it when the radio configuration, and it gives a long description of what radio configuration means, when the radio configuration equals hot standby HSPY and the band equals 6. So it's saying always apply it under that condition. It's saying the same item is applied for a 2 plus 0 configuration, and the band is 6. Unprotected is the next one, and XPIC is the next one. So by creating 4 rules, this item will get applied into the bill of material under 4 different conditions, and the quantities are different. Here you can see the XPIC requires 2 of them. The other cases only require a quantity of 1. Actually, I'm going to show you another one just to give you a little more view of how this works. So here's a strut kit, and you apply 1 per main antenna, as you can see. And when the diameter, main diameter, what main antenna, is greater than 3.5 and the main diameter is less than 6.3 feet. So this is a rule for applying this strut. It goes on any main antenna that has this diameter range. Now there's also the possibility to calculate quantities, because I'm just showing you a quantity here of 1, for example. Now if I go back and I'll filter all with this button up here, and I'm going to choose to filter on math, see math. And so taking one that is not red, standard hanger kit, here we are. So it's saying I apply this standard hanger package of 10 when, under the condition that the main antenna ACL plus 50 feet is less than or equal to 390. That's the criteria for applying this quantity. Now the quantity is calculated. As you can see, it says C math. It's a calculated quantity. The math area is up here on the right of the main form here, and the formula is it takes the number of outdoor units divided by 10, then I multiply by the main antenna center line plus 50 feet, which is divided by 3, and then I can add to it a fixed amount if I want. I want an integer value because I'm buying packages, and I'm going to round up to the nearest unit. So this is the math area which is used for this particular item, and if I select a different item, the math will change. So this, the second line here, as I said, is the edit area. So the filters are above it on the 2 rows here, and the math is calculated as I just explained here. Okay. Now I didn't talk about the filters at all in this form, but it's essentially identical to what we've done before. If I'm only interested in, let's do services this time, and I'm only interested in, let's find, say, project management. So the items for project management are given here, and these are interesting because they're in red, and there's no rule set. Red tells me that it's an invalid rule, as the red text at the top says. Invalid means that either there's no quantity, it's just empty, or it's a C math, in other words a math calculation, but the math calculation is not correct. So in this case I'm trying to divide by NA. Well, that's not correct. So the tool would not be able to work with this. So these are all items, and it looks like there's a duplicate here, actually 2 duplicates, but these are all items that are not legitimate items because the math is not correct. Let me just filter all so you can show everything again, and you can see there's a number of reds here, even ones with quantity. 0 is a legitimate quantity, but you're not going to get anything, so it's red. Here's some math that's missing or wrong. The yellow, as I've said before, this has to do with cost or BOM. Well, in the case of the main form, in the case of the layout, it's cost. In this form, it has to do with not being in the bill of material, and that's what this button up here, actually the text says also here, that this orangish yellow color for this line is an item that seems to be legitimate otherwise, but we're not using it. It's not in the layout. It's not going to come out in the report. So that's another thing we could do. So going beyond this form very quickly here, I just want to get past this. I can delete invalid items. So all the red items, if I click on here, will be deleted. They're basically not valid. I can also delete duplicate items. It may happen somebody's put in a duplicate item, so I can delete them. And if I want to delete specific items, I can click on this button here. I can delete items that are not in the bill of material, And of course I can add items. If I just fill out all these edit fields, I just click add item, it'll get added. But this is only within the rules. It'll also get added into the costs with no cost, because when you add it doesn't know the cost. But it will not be in the layout, so you have to add an item to a layout. So if I take this one, this yellowish orange one, which is not in the layout as the orange yellow text says, I just click on it. And now this one is in antenna mounting hardware. So if I click down here, add selected item to the BOM layout, it'll get added into the BOM layout as part of that antenna mounting. So if I scan down, here we are, antenna mounting, and we're looking for MT5. Here it is. So it went in, although now it's telling me that it doesn't like the rule. There's something wrong with the rule. So anyway, the point is we can go through this addition and editing within these various forms. Okay, so I don't want to go farther with this because it's a very deep subject. What I will do now is I'm going to show you creating, well, at least the options for creating a BOM, and I'll talk a little bit about the execution time and some of the alerts. So on the right hand side, this area here is all about how the bill of material is created. So I'll go through the easy ones and I'll talk a little bit about the more complicated ones after. So easy one is the sorts. So do I sort my columns, that is my site columns in the report? How do I sort them? No, don't sort them at all. Just take them as they came from the system workbook or the access file. I sort by ID, and I can sort by west to east or north to south. Going up this column here, I can include $0 items. So I may have put items in my layout that have no cost, but I still want them there because maybe I'm going to add a cost later. So the checkbox says include them. The one below it says include items even if there's no quantity. So the tool didn't find any need for any of these items that are in the layout, and I can include them anyway. So this is what this checkbox does. I can include, or rather I can build the BOM based upon one column per site, which is kind of the norm, or I can build it a column per path end. So every path has 2 path ends, and I can have one column for each. So that means that a site with multiple directions will have multiple columns, each column facing another site. Okay, so the one above it here, this checkbox, if you don't have antennas in the tool currently that are in the bill of material, antennas and radios are the only exceptions to the rules, in the sense that if they're not there, they'll get added in automatically if you ask it to. So this checkbox says if there's an antenna coming in from the engineering design that's not in my tool, automatically add it when I run the bill of material, so it doesn't get lost. So it'll automatically get added. It'll be set as a quantity of 1 per path end when that antenna name appears, and that way you'll include it in your output. There won't be a cost initially, but it's something you can fix later. This one up here, modify antenna description. Very often you'll get, say, an HP 2-18, say, is your standard antenna name, but you'll get one which is HP218X or ABC. Or so what the modify antenna description does is it truncates unrecognized characters, and there's a rule for that. I just click on this question mark here, and it says it will stop after it sees these characters. Anything beyond that will get truncated. So that's an option. So like as it says up here, UHX 10-107 will come out instead of a UHX 10-107J. So that way we keep things generic. So that's an option you can have. And lastly, of course, there's building the BOM. So to actually build the BOM, I timed these guys, and they run around just under 5 minutes, 4 minutes and 40 seconds roughly. So I'm not going to build them, but I will show you some examples in a second. Actually, I can show you right away. But it's a fairly simple thing. You click the button and it goes off and it builds the BOM based upon all of the things that we've talked about. So the one that I did previously, I did all 3 BOMs in one. Maybe I should go back and show you that first here. In the tool, if I just select one project in my list and I say build a BOM, I'll just get one sheet in my workbook. But if I choose 2 or 3 and I ask it to build the BOM, it will add them all to the same workbook, and that's what I've done for this example. So you can see there's 3 sheets here with 3 bill of materials because I selected all 3 and ran 3 BOMs at the same time. And so this is the BOM here. Okay, so the only thing we haven't talked about, just to tie up the loose ends in this, is defining rules and saving them. So as you can see, there's a data import and export button here. This has to do with the rules, the costs, and the layout of the BOM. So if I go through all of these setup items, I've set up my layout, my rules, and my costs. I can do that on a specific category. So I could be saying, oh, I'm working with AT&T and I'm working with NEC iPasso radios in 18 gig, for example. So I can build rules around that scenario, and maybe I'm going to have a different set of prices if I sell it to Verizon, for example. Maybe the same product may be identical in other ways or not, but maybe the costs are different. So I want a different storage of those things. So this data import and export allows me, after I've gone through and edited this stuff, to archive, and I can create many archives with different names. And so I just say save archive with this button here. It'll create an access file, and then I can import any other, including that one. I can import any archive of these rules, as it says BOM layout rules and cost data archive, and switch between them. So I can have different customers, different products, different, however I want to do it. I can create all these different archives of rules, costs, and layouts. I can also import and export or create Excel versions of the service data and equipment data. These are based upon the CIC database in the case of services. And there's some standard ways in which these are laid out. And this is explained in this pop-up. Actually, there's 2 pop-ups, one for service, one for equipment. It explains the headers that are expected in the Excel workbook. And that covers my very quick walkthrough. If we were going to actually go into any great detail, probably the focus would be largely on the rules, because there are so many ways rules can be built, and there's lots of pitfalls. I hope this was helpful. Thank you.